to the NFL, and one of the best games of the weekend. It was exciting. It was close. A lot of what you would ask for in an NFL game was the Miami Dolphins beating the Los Angeles Chargers, Rob, 36-34, in a game that really, went down to the wire. And, of course, the Chargers came up on the wrong end of the stick. And Brandon Staley, their head coach, now in his third season, they are 19-16 with him as their coach. And you are none too impressed with Mr. Brandon Staley.
Not at all, Chris. And this has been going on. How in the world was he not fired after they blew a 27-0 playoff lead? Seriously. You can't get fired off of that. What in the world will it take for you to be fired? And then in this game, Chris, they're up by 4 with about 4 minutes to go, and they're just going off like a hurry-up offense. Like eating up the play clock. Like, why? You're up.
Especially when you're facing that offense, as explosive as they are.
So you're trying to get first downs, burn the clock, Chris, eat up as much clock to have turnover as little when you give the ball back. You're up by 4, so they can't beat you with a field goal. Do you know what I mean? Like, what are you thinking? I'm just, at some point, when do they wake up? Do they have to lose another game, 2 or 3, when they wake up one day and say, we got this quarterback, we got this dynamic offense. Okay, Chris, and this guy's supposed to be a defensive coach, and they give up 30 points a game, okay? So I don't know about that. Why are we keeping him? What is the redeeming value of him? What does he do? The defense isn't great, and he doesn't manage the game well.
They've lost, I said, they're 19-16 under Staley. 12 of those 16 losses were by 1 score or less, so close games. And in 5 of their last 6 losses, 5 of their last 6, Rob, they had a second half lead. And they're not able to hold these leads. And their star running back, Austin Eckler, was on Jim Rome yesterday. And here's what
he said. Was he really?
Yeah, here's what he said.
Just straight up inconsistency. And it's not just the players. Like, when you look at the NFL, a lot of the players, yes, there's outliers, but a lot of us are very similar in talent. Like, there's not a huge gap. You might have a few outliers. And if your team has a few of these decent outlier players, then you have a chance to win games. If you have no studs on your team, superstars that can hold the rope and make plays consistently, it's going to be hard for you to win. And that's why we have salary caps, and that's why we pay these players, and people have the contracts that they have. And for us, when we have our guys that are getting hurt, that are being consistent for us, right, that plays a part into it. And we've had injuries over the past years, but you can't blame everything on injuries. Our coaching hasn't always been the best. Our play hasn't always been the best. And when you have a combination of those, then guess what? You're going to be inconsistent.
That guy is as honest as it gets. He didn't take the easy way out with the injuries. And he said, our coaching hasn't been the best. Chris, you just gave it. If you're ownership and you're the front office, and 5 of their last 6 games, the Chargers had a lead in the second half, and they can't close the deal. It's coaching. It's coaching.
Rob,
it ain't like you're getting buried in the first half and you can't win.
For a guy to come out and say that, you often hear coaches themselves say, we got to coach better, we got to play better. None of us did a good job, right? But for a player to come out and say our coaching hasn't always been the best, he wasn't just talking about Sunday. He's talking about these last few years.
Right.
Which obviously we can all see. Remember, for a while it was the 4th downs. Going for it in just ridiculous situations on 4th down. And now they can't hold a lead. And Rob, I said it, the pass interference play at the end of the first half was just ridiculous. And that's a player. But that's also a culture. I mean, it happens. Rob, how many games should they have won that for one reason or another, penalties, dumb mistakes, whatever, they lose.
Chris, let's go back to that playoff game because we can't get enough of it. Los Angeles is
that's
27.
The king of them all.
Yeah, 27-point blown lead in the wild card round to Jacksonville last season was the largest, of course, in franchise history. The Chargers also, Chris, became the first team to lose a playoff game, ready? With a turnover differential of +5 or better. In the NFL, if you have a +2 or 3, you're winning that game. If they had a +5, a +5 or better, you should win the game. Jacksonville's comeback was the third largest in NFL postseason history. It was of epic proportion, and that dude got to keep his job. How? If you're the Chargers ownership and management team, you're not trying to win. You have talent. You were up 27-0 in a playoff game, Chris.
Over a team that a lot of people feel is an up-and-coming, contender. And Rob, you said it, Brandon Staley's supposed to be a defensive coach. First year he gets there, they go from being, in total yards, the year before he took over, they were a top 10 defense. They were actually 10th in the league.
That was with Lynn,
in
right?
Yards with Anthony Lynn.
Anthony
10th
Lynn,
in
they
the
could
league in yards allowed.
Yep.
Now they were 23rd in scoring, not great. But Staley's first year, the defensive genius, they fall to 23rd in yards allowed, so a 13-spot drop. And then they fall to 29th in the 32-team league in points allowed. That's a 6-spot drop. Last year they improved, but still 21st in points allowed and 20th in yards allowed. I mean, it's only one game now, but they're at the bottom in both categories right now. 32nd, dead last in yards allowed, and 30th in points. Obviously, they faced the juggernaut in the Miami Dolphins. But still, as you said it, Rob, we brought him in for defense. We saw, we got a guy, right? We got Justin Herbert. This guy is the truth. Austin Eckler's tough. We got some receivers. If we shore up the defense, we're cooking with oil. So you bring in a defensive coordinator and you go the opposite way.
I don't know what the thinking is. At some point, Chris, you have to realize, what are we doing here? We have enough. You talking about Exhibit A? Chris, you got Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C. It ain't like he was a good coach, one bad game. You're not going to throw him out and be like that. But it's for your players to even believe the coach is not that great. You're right. You don't hear that. You don't hear that. Who says that? That the coaching hasn't been great? Because it hasn't been. Because he's taken so many chances. Chris, at his own 18-yard line, 4th down and 4. 4th down and 4 at your own 18? What football are you playing?
That's one of those that better work. Look, Dan Campbell, right? Against the Chiefs at his own, 17-yard line last week? Fake punt, okay? You know what? It worked. If it didn't work, Rob, he'd be getting killed. And there are situations like that. You go that far out of the box, it better work. And when Austin Eckler, Rob, and look, like you said, he's an honest guy. He's a straightforward guy.
Chris, his analysis of the team was very honest.
It was very spot on and honest, to your point. But wouldn't you agree that when a player comes out and says, generally, but especially like a leader and a guy who is thoughtful, when he comes out and says something like that, my thought is they've been talking. Like players in the locker room been talking. Players been saying, man, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, I don't think he's a lone ranger, Rob, in feeling like the coaching hasn't always been the best. Would you agree with that?
No. Right.
You hearing that from some other players?
There's no doubt about it because they know it. You know when the coach is hurting you, Chris. the coach doesn't impact you that often. You know, like most of the time, coaches who have the best players, Chris, have the best chance to win. I don't care.
I mean,
what you're
go
drawing up. I'm just saying, like you could draw up the play, but if you don't have players who could get the job done or make the right tackle or block, it doesn't matter. But I'm saying he can hurt you though if he doesn't know what he's doing.
I do think in football, more than basketball and baseball, coaching really makes a huge difference. I do think, I mean, Eckler, Rob, and his analysis, you talked about it. Rob, he was right in that a lot of these teams, the talent level is fairly close. Now, you do have certain guys, a Patrick Mahomes, a Nick Bosa, you know, guys like that, Micah Parsons, who are just great. And they obviously make a difference. But most of the guys are all very close. And to me, when a coach makes a huge difference in the NFL, and one way or the other, he makes it either positively or he makes it negatively. And they haven't been healthy, but Rob, they have some talent.
They should be they should be better. People have been picking them for years, Chris. Like seriously, like they should be in the mix. You remember that game a couple years ago against Kansas City?
Oh yeah,
they should have won that game. They you remember he went for it.
A lot of games like that.
Yeah, like there was a big game against Kansas City that was huge at home, and he blew it. He went for it in his own end and didn't get it.
You said it earlier. I mean, because a lot of people probably you fired him this early. I mean, look, you started the season with him. You give him a little time, but Rob, he should have never made it out of that playoff game.
Right. So if you
that's really what it is.
So if you start off, Chris, 0-3 with this cat, and there's some more like questionable stuff, I'm not just saying.
You probably move on.
You got to say, okay, like what are we waiting for? We're waiting to be 0-5 and the season be over?
Another season down the drain? I agree with you. Like, the leash is short. I wouldn't do it like right now.
But I'm saying if he has another
Minnesota and the Raiders, Rob. Those are 3 winnable games.
If they're 1-3, Chris, after those 4, and they don't play well, or he has a coaching blunder or something,
right?
I would be like, okay, we can't do this, like,
right? Because you're going into the bye week. This is an early bye week, but after you got 4 games and then the bye, so yeah, that would be the time. He should be on notice.
You could do it then. Like,
this
actually
isn't
perfect.
charity.
You're right.
This isn't charity, right? I mean, this is not like, well, we like him. They're fine. But this is about winning games. And, Rob, these guys work too hard. These players work too hard to have a coach being a big part of the reason that they're losing.
It makes no sense. It just makes no sense why he's doing some of the stuff that he's done. Coming off, Chris, how he survived after choking down a 27-0 lead in a playoff game is mind-boggling. Seriously.
Yeah, that was. I mean, come on. And I get it. Look, give Jacksonville credit for coming back, but still,
and the offensive coordinator got fired. How like that was the guy who got the scapegoat.
Right, no, absolutely. Right. That's exactly what he was. All right.